What is up, Patriots, and happy Monday. This is O'Connor's Quick Strike, and I'm John O'Connor. 3 stories the mainstream media won't cover or will completely twist beyond recognition, delivered in roughly 15 minutes or so. No fluff, no BS, no filler. Just the unvarnished truth peppered with my own take on what's really going on. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to say something heartfelt. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving with family and friends. But while most of us were carving turkey and watching football, 2 families in West Virginia had their lives shattered. Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, just 20 years old, was shot and killed in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday afternoon in what authorities are calling a targeted ambush. Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, 24 years old, is still fighting for his life in critical condition. Sarah volunteered to work over Thanksgiving so other guardsmen could be home with their families. She was serving her country blocks from the White House when an Afghan national who came here in 2021 under Biden's program opened fire on her and Andrew in broad daylight. My heart goes out to both families. Sarah's family is grieving an unimaginable loss, and Andrew's family is praying for a miracle. These are the men and women who protect us. Remember them. Let's get into this. 3. Here's something that should terrify you. A former FBI official revealed yesterday that a massive Chinese state-sponsored cyberattack called Salt Typhoon has likely impacted every single American. Let me say that again. Every single American. This wasn't just some run-of-the-mill hacking operation. Chinese intelligence had what cybersecurity experts are calling full-reign access to American phone calls for 5 years. 5 freaking years. From President Trump down to your mother reminding you what food to bring for Christmas dinner, China had it all. The hackers compromised major telecommunication companies, Verizon, AT&T, Lumen Technologies. They didn't just access customer data, no. They accessed U.S. intelligence wiretapping systems, the systems our government uses to conduct surveillance for national security purposes. China was inside those systems. Pete Nicoletti, Chief Information Security Officer at Check Point, told Fox News that the hackers, and I quote, had full reign access. So your grandmother calling you to remind you to pick up groceries was not a targeted person, and they are going to listen into that call. But Trump, Vance, Kamala Harris, and dozens of other U.S. government officials were specifically targeted, end quote. Think about what that means. For 5 years, China was listening. They knew what our leaders were saying, what our strategies were, who was talking to whom. This is espionage on a scale we've never seen before. The FBI and National Security Agency issued a joint advisory back in September, warning that Chinese state-sponsored actors were targeting telecommunications, government, transportation, and military infrastructure networks. But here's what makes this even more sinister. They weren't just gathering intelligence. They were positioning themselves to disrupt critical infrastructure at a time of their choosing. Water systems, power grids, communication networks, transportation systems. China wasn't just spying. They were pre-positioning to cause chaos when it suits them. According to the advisory, 3 Chinese companies believed to be behind Salt Typhoon worked directly for China's intelligence services, including units in the People's Liberation Army and Ministry of State Security. This wasn't freelance hackers in a basement somewhere. This was the Chinese government. Nicoletti said the hackers established a foothold and exfiltrated data for 5 years, which is almost unprecedented. Almost unprecedented. Translation? This is one of the most successful intelligence operations in modern history, and it happened on American soil against American citizens. Now, here's my question. Where was the Biden administration? This attack started around 2020 and continued through Biden's entire presidency. 5 years of Chinese hackers inside our telecommunications infrastructure. And what did Biden do about it? Apparently not enough to stop it. The former FBI official who blew the whistle on this said it's likely every American has been impacted. That's you, me, your family, your neighbors, everyone. China has been playing the long game while we've been asleep at the wheel. They are buying up farmland near U.S. military bases. They are launching AI-directed cyber attacks. And now we find out they've been wiretapping the entire country for half a decade. If anyone needed a reminder that China is our primary geopolitical rival, this is it. They are not our friends. They are not our partners. They are gathering intelligence, positioning themselves in our infrastructure, and preparing for something we better hope never comes. The good news? Now that's all out in the open, we can do something about it. The bad news? 5 years is a long time, and the damage is done.
2.
The Food and Drug Administration just dropped a bombshell that the mainstream media is doing everything they can to bury. Dr. Vinay Prasad, director of the FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, sent a memo to staff on Friday revealing that an internal review found that at least 10 children died after and because of receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. Let me read you what he wrote. This is a profound revelation. For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. Yeah, for the first time. After years of being told these vaccines were safe and effective for everyone, including kids, the FDA is finally admitting what many people, including myself, suspected all along. There were deaths. Prasad said that the deaths were related to myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, which has been a known but rare side effect of the mRNA vaccines, particularly in young men and teenage boys. The review examined 96 child deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System between 2021 and 2024 and determined that at least 10 were linked to the vaccines. At least 10. Prasad said the true numbers could be higher. Now, here's where this gets even more infuriating. The memo doesn't provide details like the children's ages, their medical histories, or which vaccine manufacturer was involved. It's not been published in a peer-reviewed journal. But the FDA is implementing stricter vaccine approval guidelines as a direct result of these findings. So, they found something serious enough to change policy, but not serious enough to tell the American people the full story. That's not transparency, that's damage control. Prasad criticized the way the FDA and CDC handled early evidence that the mRNA vaccines increased the risk of myocarditis in young people. He pointed out that Israel recognized the safety signal first, and back in May 2021, then CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said, "We have not seen a signal, and we've actually looked intentionally for this signal in the over 200 million doses we've given." End quote. Prasad called that statement dishonest and manipulative. And he's right. They knew. They saw the signal. They just didn't want to admit it publicly because it would undermine confidence in the vaccine rollout. Look, I'm not completely anti-vaccine, but I am pro-truth. And the truth is that the COVID vaccines were rushed through approval, pushed on the entire population, including children who faced a tremendously low risk from COVID itself. And when problems started showing up, the government circled the wagons instead of being honest with people. The memo also states that the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System is voluntary and requires a motivated person, often a doctor, to submit the information. The submission process is tedious, and most people who start the form give up. That means many more deaths may be unreported. So when the FDA says at least 10, what they really mean is, we found 10 that we couldn't ignore, but there could be more we don't know about. Prasad wrote something else that should make your blood boil. And I quote, "Putting these facts together, it is horrifying to consider that the U.S. vaccine regulation, including our actions, may have harmed more children than we saved." Wait, may have harmed more children than we saved. That's the FDA's own vaccine director saying the cure might have been worse than the disease for kids. And here's the kicker. Prasad called out his own agency for failing to properly enforce post-market commitments for the vaccines, including studying subclinical myocarditis and monitoring pregnant women. They didn't do their job. The new guidelines Prasad is proposing include requiring larger studies before vaccine approvals and potentially limiting shots for pregnant women. You know, the kind of rigorous testing that should have been done before we started jabbing millions of kids. This whole thing validates what a lot of people were saying from the beginning. Slow down. Do more testing. Be honest about the risks. But instead, anyone who questioned the vaccine was labeled anti-science, censored on social media, and shut out of the conversation. Well, guess what? The science is catching up. And it turns out the skeptics had some valid concerns. At least 10 families lost their children. 10 kids who took a vaccine they were told was safe and effective are dead. And the FDA kept quiet about it for years. That's not acceptable. That's a betrayal of public trust.
1.
President Trump announced on Friday that he's terminating all executive orders and documents that Joe Biden signed using an Autopen. And he claims that it's about 92% of everything Biden signed during his presidency. Trump posted on Truth Social, any document signed by Sleepy Joe Biden with the Autopen, which was approximately 92% of them, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. Now, for those who don't know, an Autopen is a mechanical device that reproduces signatures. It's been used by presidents going back to the Truman administration. It's not illegal. The Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel confirmed under George W. Bush that presidents can use Autopens for signing legislation and executive acts as long as it's authorized by the president. Here's where it gets interesting. Trump is claiming Biden never authorized most of these signatures. He's saying Biden's staff used the Autopen without Biden's knowledge or approval, essentially running the presidency while Biden was mentally checked out. Trump wrote, "The radical left lunatics circling Biden around the beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office took the presidency away from him. I am hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden, because the people who operated the Autopen did so illegally." He went even further, threatening Biden with perjury charges if he claims he was involved in the Autopen process. Joe Biden was not involved in the Autopen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Well, that's a bold move, but let's talk about the legal reality here. The Autopen itself isn't the issue. What matters is whether Biden authorized its use. The law doesn't require the president to physically sign every document. What matters is the president's intent and authorization. But here's the problem. If Trump is right and Biden wasn't authorizing these signatures, that raises massive constitutional questions. Who was actually running the executive branch? Were Biden's aides making policy decisions and then auto-signing them in his name? And if so, is that legal? The House Oversight Committee has been investigating this. Chairman James Comer has called it one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history and said they have exposed the Biden Autopen presidency. Biden's team has denied it all. In June, Biden said, "Let me be clear, I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false," end quote. But we all watch Biden's cognitive decline play out in real time. The stumbling, the confusion, the blank stares, the walking off stage. The media covered for him until they couldn't anymore. So when Trump says Biden wasn't in charge, a lot of Americans believe it because they saw it with their own eyes, including myself. Now, can Trump actually invalidate all these documents? That's where it gets legally murky. He's the president, and presidents have broad authority to rescind their predecessors' executive orders. But claiming they are invalid because of how they were signed, that's unprecedented territory. If this goes to court, and it probably will, judges will have to determine whether the Autopen signatures were properly authorized. And that could open up a massive can of worms about who was actually running the Biden White House. Think about the implications here. If these executive orders are deemed invalid, what happens to the policies implemented under them? What about pardons Biden issued? What about international agreements signed with the Autopen? Biden signed 162 executive orders during his presidency, plus hundreds of memoranda, proclamations, and notices. If 92% of those were Autopen signatures, we are talking about potentially invalidating the vast majority of Biden's executive actions. Look, the legal experts can argue about whether Autopens are proper or not. But here's what we know. The American people watched Joe Biden deteriorate mentally over 4 years. His own party eventually forced him out of the 2024 race because they knew he couldn't handle it. So when Trump says Biden wasn't making these decisions, when he says Biden's staff was running the show and auto-signing documents in his name, it doesn't sound far-fetched. It sounds like exactly what we all suspected was happening behind closed doors. The question isn't whether Autopens are legal. The question is, who was really president? Was it Joe Biden? Or was it a committee of staffers making decisions and stamping them with Biden's auto signature? Americans deserve to know who was actually running the country. And if it wasn't the guy we elected, supposedly, that's a constitutional crisis. Well, that's your quick strike for today. China had access to our phone calls for 5 freaking years. The FDA finally admits COVID vaccines killed kids. And Trump is dismantling Biden's Autopen presidency. 3 stories, 3 examples of the government either failing us or lying to us, or both. Look, if these stories got your attention, do me a favor. Gently tap that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. The mainstream media won't touch these stories, so it's up to us to get the word out. So you can find all of our episodes, show notes, and more at o'connorsquickstrike.com. And if you ever wonder where an episode is, check me out on X at O'Connor Podcast for updates. Feel free to DM me there too. This is O'Connor's Quick Strike, and I'm John O'Connor. Thanks for spending part of your Monday with me. I'll see you right back here on Wednesday with 3 more stories they are trying to bury. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay strong.